Good evening. It's Monday, March 13th of 2023. This is the Plan Commission. Those of you that are online, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
Excellent. Thank you.
I can
Audio's back.
Great. Okay, so we do have a quorum, and we are certified in compliance with open meetings laws. So the first item on our agenda would be the approval of the minutes from February 13th and February 27th. I would entertain a motion to approve those minutes.
Move to approve. I'll make that motion.
Motion by Robinson. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Bradford. Any questions on the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
And any opposed? None opposed. That motion carries. Next item is City Council Representative Report. Alderperson Caravello.
Yes, looks like at the February 14th council meeting, R17 of 2023 was approved, and at the February 28th meeting, R24 and R25 were both approved, and R26 and R27 that were on the agenda were taken off the agenda and postponed.
Okay, thank you. Next would be staff report. Director Shield.
In your packet is your standard, just a summary of some of the more recent projects. Nothing particular to point out other than the Quick Trip public hearing, joint with council, is scheduled for April 11th, which is the night of a council. We'll still have our regular Plan Commission meeting on Monday, April 10th, and then we'll meet jointly with the council at 7 p.m. on the 11th.
Any questions on the staff report? Those that are on Zoom, can you see the shared screen right now?
I can.
You can?
Yes.
Okay, we're just not seeing it in the room, so. All right, next item is the plan development, general development plan for Stoughton Hospital at 900 Ridge Street. We do have a need for a public hearing, but before we go into that, we're going to have an update. And not really sure why it's not sharing in the room here, but I'll see what we can do here. I think I know why. Yeah. I think I'm on the wrong packet, that's why. There we go. I was on tomorrow's agenda.
Right.
I'm at the finance
Okay.
meeting instead of the plan commission meeting. All right, so we have the shared screen here, and then who's going to do the presentation?
I was just going to give an overview of the project, but then allow the other folks from the applicants team to make a presentation. My screen actually is not shown on the display monitors.
I see it here.
That's not mine.
Oh,
We're seeing an email from Michael.
Okay, just
Okay.
1 second. Let me try
is your
something
screen
different.
share? No.
Just 1 second. Let's try this again.
Okay.
Share a different screen. All right,
Over
now we
there,
see a screen.
got it.
We're good
Okay.
online.
All right, thank you. Just as a quick overview, this particular request is a rezoning request to rezone the properties as shown in color on the screen. I'll walk through those a little bit more precisely here in a moment. Most of the properties are zoned, most of the property areas are already zoned institutional. The areas that are shown in this alternate color for future parking areas are shown as SR6. That's the current zoning. All of these parcels are planned to be rezoned to the Planned Development District. The Planned Development District allows for the uses as approved as part of the general development plan. One of the primary reasons for the request is to accommodate a setback variation. You'll recognize as they talk about the presentation, the existing facility that they have along Academy Street and Church Street actually is already closer than what the standards would allow for. So the two exceptions that are really requested as part of the planned development district are related to the setback along Academy Street and along Church Street. The general development plan as presented would allow for parking in the areas that are shown on the illustration, and the buildings to be positioned as shown as well. This is not a meeting to approve the site plan per se. They would have to come back with a specific implementation plan to walk through and get approval from this body related to the details of the parking lots and of the building. Now, that's not to say there isn't material in the packet that they'll walk through to help illustrate their intentions, but really the general development plan zoning process is what we're focusing on tonight. Doesn't mean you can't ask questions or talk about the other aspects of it, but be aware that that step is yet to come. So with that, maybe it'd be appropriate for the hospital team to give a presentation.
All right, good evening. I'm Teresa Linfors, representing Stoughton Health here tonight, and thank you again for your time on this matter. Just to do a general overview, again, we're looking at doing a 2-story, 57,000 square foot medical office building to accommodate for changes from inpatient hospital-based settings to outpatient settings, as well as our growing specialist needs for space to see their patients. And we're also looking to move our current rehab services that are off-site out at the SWAC building back on-site on our campus to be more beneficial and collaborative with our other service lines. So with that said, we certainly intend with our plan as we presented you to meet all city requirements as it relates to the lighting and the parking and the landscaping and so on. We're also looking at putting in solar power to help with that energy need and to be good stewards, if you will, in the community that way. And we did meet with the neighbors proactively prior to our last meeting of coming forth to you all. And in addition, have received some slides from the neighbors, which were quite helpful, and appreciate that thoughtful regard to, some suggestions to our plan. And so I just wanted to share openly with the council and with our neighbors that are here some of the things that we think we can do in regards to the PowerPoint that they presented. And one thing is that we feel that we can reduce our parking stalls down by, I believe it's 18 stalls to allow for some more green space and kind of meet in the middle from what the requirements are. We are also looked at the entrance and exit into this parking lot on the west side of our plan that butts up on Lynn Street. And due to the grading and drainage, as I understand it, we cannot move that area to the south of the existing parking lot or in via the east, but we could move it to and are open to moving it to the north up on Ridge Street, where it would face out and that entrance exit point would come out onto facing our wellness garden, so cars exiting or entering wouldn't be shining lights directly into, a home across the street. So are open to certainly that. The other thing I just wanted to emphasize again, I know it's been mentioned to others, but that this parking lot will primarily be a daytime parking lot, Monday through Fridays. And we are looking at having timed lighting in that parking lot as a result. Obviously, given various seasons in Wisconsin, the wintertime, we have days that are, it's dark longer and that sort of thing. So we will time our lighting accordingly to still help those day shift people transition to home. But the traffic flows coming to and from that parking lot otherwise on the evenings and night shifts will really remain as they are today because we want our employees safe and we want them to park closer to the hospital when we don't have as large a patient volumes with all our clinics and outpatient rehab and so on going on. So we are looking at and considering all of that. So again, primarily Monday through Friday, daytime flow of traffic. And then last but not least, certainly, one of the concerns is regarding the current large trees. I believe it's cedar trees, oak trees. And unfortunately, and I have experts with me who can speak better to this than I can, but unfortunately, as I understand it, it's not an option to keep those trees as they currently exist due to grading requirements, and also with it being a parking lot, with the salt and different things, some of the plantings and things have to be taken into consideration to what will really grow there with salt and snow removal and so on. One thing I also want to add is that we are very welcoming and open to having open and continued discussions with the neighbors as far as helping us with our landscape plan, so that there's good dialogue and we can all find a good resting place for that. We do intend to put, robust trees back in, but we can't unfortunately keep the existing. So if there's questions about that later, or if you want to address any of that now, I can certainly call up others to help speak on those points. But that's really my update and my comments here.
All right, thank you. Commissioners, any questions for Teresa?
All right, thank you.
Any questions for landscaper? Any other questions relating to this matter? All right, hearing none. So we do have a need for a public hearing. So what we'll do is we close our regular meeting, and then we do reopen for the public hearing, and there's a few people signed up to speak with this one. And we'll just go in order here. Basically, what we ask is you keep your comments to 3 minutes or less if you could. We'll time it. And come up, and it's not a two-way conversation. We can only listen. We can't really speak back and forth. But certainly if there's some questions, the commissioners can have that as part of their deliberation when we're done. So your questions or comments or concerns may be addressed that way. So the first one that signed up to speak is it Lane Close?
Good evening, all. My name is Lane Close. My wife Pam and I have lived at 208 North Lynn Street for 37 years. We've raised 3 children there, gone through the Stoughton school system. I worked at Stoughton Health as a registered nurse for 33 years. First as surgical services manager and then as surgical services coordinator. We and the neighbors see Stoughton Health as a valuable asset for the city of Stoughton and hope that it will be an advocate and resource for healthy living and health care for many years yet to come. We, the neighbors of North Lynn Street, having seen the basic outline of the Stoughton Health proposed expansion plan at that meeting on February 8th of this year, have put together a PowerPoint with a few suggestions and ideas for that project. The idea is not opposition, but a request to be included in this to help Stoughton Health to be a good steward of the neighborhood, the environment, the people affected by this, and the city of Stoughton as a whole. After all, the devil is in the details. And at this early stage, there really aren't any details yet. Many of you here tonight were emailed that PowerPoint. Those that weren't, we have a few paper copies available if you would like to see it. The PowerPoint presents our ideas in greater detail and clarity and can obviously be examined at leisure. However, I will summarize our main ideas. 1, if the 80-car parking lot does need to be adjacent to the 200 block of North Lynn Street, then we are suggesting that the entrance and exits should not be on residential streets of Ridge or North Lynn Street. There are children in this neighborhood and a lot of traffic already. Put the entrance and exits in the already established hospital traffic routes on Church Street and Giles Street. Number 2, if the parking lot adjacent to North Lynn Street does require a retaining wall to grade the lot to direct rainwater runoff away from Ridge Street towards Giles Street, then we suggest that there be a green space surrounding the lot with trees and other foliage of sufficient thickness and height to block headlights, lot lighting, and any other light pollution from infiltrating into the neighborhood. The houses, trees, and fencing that were recently raised already served that function previously. We were told that if a retaining wall is required, it could be as high as 8 feet at the corner of Ridge and North Lynn Streets. And 3, we would like to see the green space incorporate as many of the current trees, i.e. the cedars, oaks, maples, as is possible, and otherwise incorporate mostly evergreens to maintain their noise and light filtering effects year-round. This would also block the view of the wall if it is constructed and create a pleasing environment for all, be they neighbors, visitors, or wildlife. Thank you very much for listening.
12 seconds to spare.
Timed it out.
You did perfect. All right, next up is Mark.
Ready?
Yep.
Hello, respected Plan Commission members, respected alderpersons, and respected Stoughton Hospital staff, and the citizens of this great city of Stoughton. My name is Mark Holtzman. I've been living in this city for 25 years at 200 North Lynn Street. My family of 3 children were raised at this location, with my youngest daughter born in the house. I've seen how the neighborhood has changed in 25 years. The challenges are both interesting and sad to witness. From first, the loss of a great neighborhood Christ Lutheran church and adjoining school to a fire. Second, greater than 10 homes being demolished surrounding a hospital. And third, the vitality of those families providing a neighborhood life, grandparents, parents, children's birthday parties, and filling the air with laughter. The old neighborly atmosphere adjacent to the hospital has changed forever. On a more positive note, with due respect, I want to thank Stoughton Hospital employees for providing emergency health care for the citizens of Stoughton and the surrounding area. I understand that the city is growing and experiencing an aging population. Healthcare is a vital role of Stoughton Hospital. So after attending a neighborly meeting at the hospital on Wednesday, February 8th, my mind was a bit stymied on the plans for the huge addition on Church Street and the 80-space parking employee lot planned directly across North Lynn Street for me. It was a bit of a shock that the plan included the removal of all, and I repeat all, major oak trees and cedar trees, maple trees on this newly acquired land. This really is not a great example of sustainability in the city of trees. The parking lot removes the beautiful nature of flora and fauna. I'm a bird lover and enjoy the nature of birds in this city. I've witnessed bald eagles feeding on prey directly across the street, owls hooting at night during a full moon, hawks attacking a group of black crows, robins, cardinals, mourning doves singing in the morning, while hummingbirds and sandhill cranes feed in the backyard. And the examples go on and on. Nature is thriving on all levels. I know that it takes many years to grow white oak shade trees that block the light as well as provide a habitat for birds. Please consider fast-growing evergreens, blue spruces, pines, cedar trees, etc. I also speak softly for the silent voice from the surrounding neighbors. It is important that the neighborhood changes made should include a sustainability plan that will enhance the existence of natural life in the city of trees for a century and beyond. Just planting shrub trees and hedgerows and lower vegetation will not be suffice to block most of the light being emitted across the neighborhood. Please make sure this is addressed in detail on the landscaping layout for the neighbors to see. I hope my input has an impact on future changes and takes into consideration sustainability plans in the city of trees for this great city of Stoughton. Respectfully submitted. Thank you for listening to me.
Thank you. Okay, next up is Julie.
Hello, everybody. My name is Julie Peterson. I've been a resident of Stoughton for more than 60-plus years. My father built the house that I live on Lynn Street. I grew up in that house, and my children also grew up in that house. In the past 10 years, there have been many changes that have been made by the hospital with little input from the neighborhood. We've seen a big increase in traffic. I've counted 250 cars a day that go by my house. My concern would be having the parking coming, the exit in and exit coming in off of Lynn Street is a safety concern. It's on a hill, it's on a crest. The cars go fast. They come fast off of Lynn Street, or from Main Street onto Lynn Street, and coming from Ridge up to Lynn Street. 250 cars plus a day go by my house. I've counted. The houses that were taken down in the fall, there's been substantial lighting, increased lighting across North Lynn Street. My concern is that when the parking lot is built, the lights are just it's gonna be like living in an airport. I don't know how they're gonna do the lighting. I'm worried about health, the deep sleep. It's a lot to take in. It's a lot. I just hope the hospital considers the neighbors' concerns and does as much as they can to have it aesthetically pleasing to the eye and take into account what the neighbors are going to be living with and looking at. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, next would be, Teresa already spoke.
She wants to.
Did you want to speak some more? Okay. All right. Anybody else here or online that would like to speak that didn't sign up? Hearing none, we'll close the public hearing and then we'll reopen for our regular business. And what we have is we're looking for a recommendation to the city council. And what do we have here, Rodney?
This is the ordinance to rezone. This is the ordinance to rezone the properties as depicted on the illustration from the SR6 and/or institutional to the PD General Development Plan. I would ask for some liberty to add another recital that's not contained in this, but I want to explicitly list the properties that are included in this ordinance revision. And they are included in the packet, but I think we should add them directly on your screen as the reference lot parcels. And so we'd like to add that as a reference or as a recital within the ordinance. And if the commissioners were comfortable with that addition, we'd include that in the version that would go to the city council.
Are there any questions or comments from commissioners? Commissioner Farrell.
Not really in regards to the zoning, but I did have a few thoughts that will probably come up, when we get to the SIP. But do you want to hear those now, or do you want to hold those? I'd like to keep them on my notebook and bring them back up if you want.
Well, I certainly would hope that you'd bring them up at that point as well. But if there's discussion, I think the audience and/or applicant would be interested in understanding what some thoughts might be related to that.
Okay.
Again, we're not here to take action on it, but if there's some high-level comments you'd like to make, I think that'd be appropriate.
You might want to just pull your mic up a bit and make sure everybody can hear
Okay.
your comments.
I
You
started
should have
getting
enough
feedback.
slack there. You can pull it up towards you if you want.
I was getting a feedback loop there.
Oh,
No?
You're good.
Maybe it's just me? Okay. Yeah, nothing huge. On the west parking lot, I'm wondering why they just can't be one big lot. It seems like, I'm not sure, it looks like there's some little strip of grass. I know you would lose a few more parking spots with the aisles, but
you want to introduce yourself then?
Yeah, Nick Tennyson,
You
civil
can-
engineer.
You can pull that up.
Nick Tennyson, I'm a civil engineer with Kapoor. There's like a 7-foot retaining wall right now in between the existing lot and the proposed 80 space lot.
okay.
So there's really not a feasible way to connect them into one lot.
I can picture that now that you mention that. I remember, yeah, okay. Okay. Thank you. I guess the other question, there's talk about, losing these mature trees and what we're going to go back with. And I think I mentioned this before. When I was in planning with the Navy, we had a specific formula for the base. If you cut down a 12-inch tree, you had to plant 4 3-inch trees to mitigate that. And we don't have that here, right? There's
Right.
no, so, regardless of how many trees or diameter we take down, they can go back with landscape trees if they wanted to.
Yeah, for the group here, the city operates landscaping based on a point schedule. So there's so many points that are required on a site to offset parking and/or buildings and foundational plantings and the like that are enumerated within the ordinances. That doesn't mean they can't go over and above that, but there isn't a penalty by ordinance for removal of an existing tree.
Okay, and the point system doesn't necessarily, at the end of the day, if you did the math, so to speak, on, diameter, breast height of a tree, we could end up with less trees, if you will, than we started.
To existing trees could get allocated points, so
Okay.
they'd still get points, but it wouldn't necessarily be based on an excessive diameter, for example.
Okay,
Yeah, it wasn't too long ago, we updated our point system, and we worked with our tree commission to do that because they had more expertise than we did. Although I know Alder Schumacher and Alderperson Majewski have some expertise in that area, above and beyond certainly what I have. So we do also rely on you folks to help, kind of guide the process as far as maybe some of the things you'd like to see there.
okay. And my last question had to do with photogrammetrics. I know in the code we have a minimum in parking lots of 0.5 foot candles at the property line, but I didn't see anything about maximum. Is there something that addresses maximum foot candles? I saw something about you're not supposed to be able to observe the luminaire from a residential property, but I'm talking foot candles in the middle of a parking lot. Is there a maximum?
There's an overall average photometric maximum, if I recall. So they actually take an average of the entire area.
Okay,
So there is some upper limits, if you will, just like the max at the property line is a half a foot candle at the property line. And that would be right-of-way line and/or a property line.
so there's a number that is the maximum average across the,
Site.
okay. What is that number? Yeah. Remember?
I don't have it on.
I'll put you on the spot,
It's
sorry.
like 2.5.
There you go.
Something like that.
What is it?
I think it's 2.5.
2.5, okay. All right, yeah, I think, okay. Because I was looking at some of the numbers in the middle, and they looked like they were kind of on the bright side.
Well, certainly you're going to have that be the case under the luminaires. Certainly
Yeah.
you're going to have
Sure.
larger numbers at those points.
Yeah. Okay, that was all I had, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else in the room? Alderperson Caravello?
Yeah, Commissioner Farrell actually asked, something I was kind of hoping that there would be some imaginative way that the parking lots could be combined so that all entry and exit points are on Church or using the existing entry and exit points. But if there's a retaining wall that prohibits that because it's just, the elevation just doesn't allow it to happen, that's unfortunate. I was hoping that could somehow be accommodated so that there was just those one entry and exit points and avoiding Ridge and Lynn Street. One thing I have a question about for Rodney about the planning or the plan development versus institutional as far as definitions and how that, why wouldn't everything just fall under institutional? If you can explain that.
For practical purposes, you really are rezoning this, using the institutional as your base underlying zoning. So the standards of the institutional district are being captured in the general development plan. The reason it has to go through the plan development process is you can't meet the setback requirement for the building addition along Academy Street and Church Street. And there wouldn't be good rationale to approve a variance, for example. So this offers that opportunity for that exception or deviation from that standard to be accomplished in much the same way.
Okay. So it really has primary to do with the actual siting of the structure.
Yeah, valid question. I think I should just reiterate, the general development plan is itemizing locations for the parking lot facilities that are planned, even though we're not approving said plan for each of those lots. It's identifying where those would be, and it's also identifying where the future building addition will be. In other words, if they wanted to put a building on one of these lots that are identified in this plan as parking right now, they'd have to come back through a process to do that.
Okay.
You'd have to amend the general development plan.
Okay. And yeah, also I was concerned about hoping that there would potentially be some way, because the proposed amount of parking that's being added is above and beyond the required amount of parking, right?
Yep. A great point and an opportunity to educate as well. We're not approving the number of stalls for this project tonight. We're approving the areas that could be improved with parking. When they come back with the SIP, they still have to meet the standards of the district, or standards of the parking requirements. The commission is allowed to grant up to 125% of the 25% additional above the required number of stalls for the site. So in theory, they would come back with a proposal that would not install above that, plus 25%, if you will, right away. Doesn't mean they couldn't do it at some point when their demand is increased to accommodate that. So right now, they would be held at that threshold. Again, we're not doing the site plan design for each of these parking areas tonight. Even the access points to the street are not being approved tonight. We're identifying the land area that would accommodate future parking facilities.
Okay. All right. Anything from Commissioner Bradford? All right. Anybody?
Your Honor?
Yep, I was getting to the people online. Go ahead, you can go first.
All right. A couple questions. So first, as far as the way I'm understanding this, all vegetation basically is going to be removed because of the grading issues that they have. If that's the case, I don't understand why they just don't grade out, get rid of the 7-foot retaining wall and grade it to be able to function as a single parking lot instead of two separate parking lots with different entrances.
Okay.
That's my first question.
All right, you want us to answer them or you want to just ask them all first? Alderman Maskey.
Then my next one is just a comment when it comes to, well, actually, there's two things. I know this is very preliminary. Are there going to be retention, detention for the runoff from these new parking lots?
The answer to that is yes.
Okay. Those will be on site, I'm assuming?
Yeah, there's on-site stormwater management requirements.
Okay. And then the third one is just a comment. This is just me from what I've seen in the past and how we handle landscaping with the point system. I think it's somewhat light. I think we don't put enough emphasis on it. And I'd almost consider, if for commercial properties, that it be a percentage of their total cost of their project that has to go into landscaping. Just like it's recommended for homeowners when they are building a house to have a certain percentage of their house total cost be for landscaping. Whatever, as in saying, if you had a $100,000 house, you would have to spend $10,000 for landscaping. So that's just a comment on that portion. But as far as going back to the first with the grading issues, civil engineer, I think you can figure it out if you're not trying to save plants, I don't understand, mature trees, which you're not, why this cannot be graded out to a functioning parking lot that will be able to exit onto Church Street.
All right, did you want to come up and speak to that?
You'd have to grade the whole thing. Yeah, so that's a good question to ask. On that existing west lot, it's much higher than the existing parking lot next to the hospital. And so in our grading plan, we'd be cutting down a little bit of the hill that exists in the center of those west lots and then balancing the site overall so that it's creating a more flat surface for a parking lot. If you were to want to join them together, it would be massive excavation, like cutting down 7 feet on the whole site, and then you would have nowhere to go with all of the dirt there. Plus, then you would be far below the grade on North Lynn Street, which would also create issues. So once again, just with the way that the terrain is, it's not really feasible to join them together.
Would that change the stormwater management plan as well?
Well, yeah, that would also cause issues because where we'll have to connect to the city storm sewer would be in Giles Street. And if you make the whole parking lot lower, then it will be lower than the existing storm sewer in Giles Street, so you won't be able to get the water out, essentially creating a low spot there.
What about if you were to, and you probably can answer this off the cuff, but we're getting really into the SIP stuff on that, but demolish existing parking lot, cut and fill, so you have a more gradual grade in this new one whole big parking lot.
Yeah, I guess we would have to study that further. I can't answer that right now, but
Right.
that would be
the elevations either, but
quite a bit of added cost and work as well for the
absolutely.
hospital.
Yeah, sure.
And Alder, may I ask you, since it was your question, did you have any follow-up?
No, I just was asking that question, and this is preliminary, so yeah, and it will cost more. But you know what? I think for the residents that are living on Lynn Street and Ridge Street, where they'll be burdened with the extra traffic flow coming out through there into the residential neighborhood, I think it's worth it.
Okay, thank you. Alderperson Robinson, did you have, or Commissioner Robinson, did you have anything?
No.
All right, and how about Alderperson Schumacher?
On the site overall, I mean, I'm always sad to see when big sections of mature trees are removed for, especially to have impervious surface put in place. That's, just tragic to have that happen. So I would certainly hope that they would work out a reasonable compromise with what the neighbors have presented about their plans with it as well, because it still is within a neighborhood, and it does need to, also function as a neighborhood. One comment I had seen kind of float past here was the possibility of, on that existing east parking lot that's kind of underneath the retaining wall there, what about a parking structure, say a 2-level parking structure on there? You'd already have one layer that would be recessed under the 7 feet, so you'd be raising it up and then you wouldn't actually be increasing any of your impervious surface.
Yeah, you are talking big boy.
Sure, go ahead, Teresa.
As I understand it, parking structure is very costly, and as I understand it, it runs about $30,000 per parking stall. So I think that would be cost prohibitive for a nonprofit critical access hospital. So it's certainly something we did here previously and gave thought to, but when we did our research, it really would undermine our whole project, or allow it to not be, like I say, cost effective for us.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Alder Schumacher?
I understand that those are costly. Would it be in the plan at any point in the future plans for, like potentially any further expansions of the hospital, just to have maybe a foundational bit set for that?
Sure, I sat down a little too quickly. That is something certainly, I don't want to say never ever could it happen. I know one of our long-term plans is to take down would be our east side of our campus closest to Scollin, our 1956 wing. And I know there has been some discussion as when that building comes down, would there be some potential and opportunity on that side of the building? But again, the ripple effect and the timing, that can't happen first. We have to build this first and then replace and move current patient care areas in that area out. And so it's kind of that, what comes first, chicken or the egg, so to speak.
Anything else for
Okay.
Teresa before she sits down again?
No, that's good, thanks.
Yep, thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Anybody else have any questions or comments? So,
I have a question.
we don't engage in back and forth, sorry. But certainly you have other opportunities to speak to this, and maybe we can talk a little bit about the process.
Well, this is the public hearing related to this aspect of the project. This would then go to the Common Council for action on the rezoning. If it was approved, it would then be up to the applicant to submit their SIP or specific implementation plans, and that would come back for Planning Commission consideration, and that would be an action by the Plan Commission. It's not a public hearing setting for that. The next item on your agenda is related to the consolidation of the lots as part of a certified survey map. There isn't a public hearing related to that, but it's part of the application process as well.
Right, and that would add, as far as, this is an ordinance, so at the city council, it'll be on two separate meetings typically, unless they waive the rules. And at the city council, there is opportunity for public comment. So you could speak at the beginning of the meeting to this item. It's not a public hearing, but it's a public comment, which is very similar. So you would have a couple more opportunities to speak at the city council meetings. You certainly send emails as well, if that's, more suited, to your time and availability. So that kind of gives you an idea of where we are in the process here. Anything from commissioners?
I just have one more quick thing regarding, I guess, I think we're referred to as like the kind of land banked future potential parking lots at Ridge and Academy, and then at Giles and Lynn on the, I guess it would be the northwest corner of Giles and Lynn. I don't know if this is the appropriate time to ask this question. I'm kind of wondering about timing on those, what the timing might be. And I'm sorry, I should have
I
asked
don't
this
mind
question
getting
while you
back
were
up.
still there.
Your steps in.
If there's what are you looking at timeline for the future of those?
Yeah, I can't even predict on that. Really, nothing specific in the timeline for that. We've obtained the homes and, have that area, and so we wanted to include the larger picture as part of our bringing this forward, but no definitive timelines or anything set on those at this juncture.
Okay. And is there, as far as those sites are concerned, so at Giles and Lynn, that northwest corner there, those structures are removed.
Giles and Lynn, I'm just
At
thinking here.
the, I guess it's
Yes, yes,
okay.
correct.
Because I know the ones at Ridge and Lynn are gone there.
Yes.
And is there a way to, I don't know, since there's no timeline as far as the parking accommodation plan, is there a?
And he's up and about, and he was planning, I think, he was gonna go, I was in January, I think, and he was gonna go on a
Oopsie.
cruise.
Maybe that was, if there's a way to look at those as maintained as green space or something.
Oh,
that-
in the meantime?
Yeah, in the meantime, and to landscape them.
Oh, yeah, he went to it. We went to
That's
it.
something I can certainly take back to our team, and I think we would certainly
Yeah.
entertain that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Hey,
I
think
think
it was,
that would be
yeah,
helpful.
we said hi to him. We had
Okay.
something.
There you go. You good? Okay,
Yep, got him.
thank you.
You're welcome, thank you.
All right. Any other questions from commissioners? Otherwise, we are looking for a recommendation. I think Rodney had the resolution on there, and we did want to include in the specific lots in the resolution. So at this point, I would entertain a motion for the resolution, or for the ordinance. Ready? Okay, it's moved by Bradford. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Commissioner Farrell.
Does it include that additional recital?
Yeah. So it's the resolution with the
With
additional.
the additions.
Yep,
Please,
yep.
yes.
All right. Any questions or comments from commissioners? Hearing none. All in favor, say aye.
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 And are there any opposed? That motion would carry. And then the next item is related as well, and that's a certified survey map, also known as the CSM. And Rodney, you want to walk us through this one?
Yeah, so this really just takes the contiguous parcels that are owned by Stoughton Hospital or the organization and consolidates them into one parcel. You'll recognize the formerly discussed ones at the corner of Lynn and Ridge, or Lynn and Church. I'm sorry, Lynn and Giles are not included because they're not contiguous, but the other properties that were contained within the resolution for rezoning are included in this certified survey map.
All right. Any questions on that? Hearing none, we're looking for a recommendation on the motion to City Council on the CSM. I would entertain that motion.
I'll make the motion, Mayor.
Okay, motion by Schumacher. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Bradford. Any discussion on the CSM? Hearing and seeing none. All in favor, say aye.
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 And any opposed? None opposed. That motion carries. All right, thank you for coming out. So those items will be at the City Council on March
28th.
March 28th for the first reading on the general development plan, and then the CSM, are we going to take that the same night, or
That'll probably follow with the second reading, so that'll probably be the April 11th meeting.
April 11th would be the final, and then we'll also be coming back here with the site plan at some point. All right, thanks for everyone that came out. You're welcome to stay. If you have better things to do, I'd leave too. We'll just give them a second to clear out of here. All right, we'll move on to the next item then. And the next item would be the urban service area amendment for the expansion of Stonecrest. Director Shield, you want to walk us through this? Sure.
Contained in your packet is a project we've discussed prior to this, but the urban service area amendment that's being proposed on the east side of the city would encompass the area that would allow for the expansion of the Stonecrest subdivision, as well as include and create contiguity between the area that's already developed within a town. This area is being proposed to be added to the urban service area at the same time, so it doesn't create an isolated pocket that's not contained in the urban service area. That's not to say that these properties in the town would be specifically served any differently or become part of the city, but it just affords the opportunity to have them included in the urban service area amendment. Throughout the document, very similar to ones you've seen recently for Magnolia Springs and soon to see for the Stoughton Trailers development, is an articulation of capacities related to the sanitary system, the stormwater system, and how it's consistent with the comprehensive plan. We can certainly walk through the components of this document, but I think what you see here is very similar to what you would have seen in the other developments. What the process for this is ultimately this is a recommendation to the City Council. The City Council will take action on it with ultimately it's a recommendation to the Capillary Regional Planning Commission. The mayor and I and others will attend that public hearing at the Capillary Regional Planning Commission seeking this amendment to the district. Once that process is done, the DNR, Capillary Regional Planning Commission actually acts as the plan review agency for the DNR. It's ultimately a DNR final action, but they act as the review agency. So if you have any questions within this, it talks about the number of housing units that are anticipated. You'll recognize this represents the draft concept plan. I'm sorry, I'm whipping through the screen here, but contained in the packet of materials are the maps and the different appendices related to the document as well. I can certainly pull them up. We've got the wetland delineation as an exhibit. The maps certainly are contained as an appendices as well. They're just very large. That's why it's very challenging to show them all.
We also have the team of the developers are here as well, if you have any questions for them. I think there's some here and there may be some online as well. Is there anything that Tom or Steve you wanted to add at this point?
I think it speaks for itself, the document. And Steve would be more well suited to
All right.
answer any questions, I think, than John or I.
All right. Steve, did Rodney miss anything?
No, he covered it well. Obviously, we saw these more in the beginning of 2022, but there hasn't been any major changes to the plan.
Okay.
I will just add that we have some lingering small engineering comments that we're hoping to incorporate in the document. If there are any such changes that would be appropriate, we'd identify those as part of the presentation of the council.
All right. Are there any initial thoughts or questions from commissioners?
I did have one, Mayor, and it's outside of this urban service area amendment scope here, but that the space that's immediately to the east and then that kind of bite that's out of the southern end of that, are those both sand mines?
So the one to the east is actually the quarry.
Okay.
And Payne and Dolan actually owns that area. The area to the south is that the former?
Yeah, that's that bite out of there.
Yeah, that's a farmette property there.
Okay. All right, I was just curious about the uses of those two spaces.
Okay. Any other initial questions from commissioners? Okay, hearing none, so we're looking for a recommendation to the city council, as Rodney kind of outlined, that we submit this on behalf of the applicant, or we are the applicant.
Ultimately, the city of Stoughton's the applicant. We've worked with the development team to help. Obviously, they put the majority of it together. We're providing input. It's ultimately the city's application that goes to the Capillary Regional Planning Commission.
So hearing no questions or comments, I'm looking for a motion to to send the application, to the city council, basically.
There's a resolution that I'm trying to pull up on the screen, but that's ultimately what
All right.
we're seeking endorsement of.
It's not loading.
He's working at it.
Too many devices going in here. One of these nights, there's gonna be smoke coming out of that thing, Rodney.
It's the resolution that's included in your packet.
I did read it earlier.
All right. Well, we would entertain a motion for that
I'll go ahead and
resolution. A motion by Bradford. Is there a second? Was there a second?
Second.
A second by Farrell. Okay. Any discussion on the resolution that's not loading up?
Rodney, did I have to say something about, you said there was some engineering things you wanted to attach, so.
Yeah, as I indicated, there might be a few tweaks that will come, but we'll identify those specifically if there are changes
Okay, so I
at the
moved with
council
the
level.
additions from your office.
Okay.
on
Thank
engineering.
you.
All right. Any discussion on the resolution? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 And any opposed? None opposed, that motion carries. Okay, the next item, number 10, is the building addition and site improvements of the Water Street Tavern at 324 South Water Street. And you're not
I'm getting
sure
there.
anymore.
I'm getting there.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, have a good night.
James McFadden, I think, is on
Okay,
the Zoom call.
all right.
You'd have to unmute him if you did
Yeah.
have him muted.
And while this is loading up, here we go. So what we have is in your packet, there's some maps and some items related to the expansion that they want to do at the Water Street Tavern. Anything specific you want to cover, Rodney?
I think I'll allow the applicant to speak to it. I'm going to pull up the screen so it'll be easier for folks to get to it. Yep, I'm going to share a different screen. Yeah, I was pausing that until I got to this page.
I think you got to stop and reload it. There it is. You did it.
Yep.
All right, James McFadden is on here. Do you want to kind of walk us through this?
Yes, what we're proposing, first of all, last July, we came before the commission and you reviewed and approved basically pushing the fence line to start at the bottom of the page, pushing the fence line down towards the southern property line, and then filling in with additional paving bricks the area behind that. Immediately to the north of the building, what we were looking to do is we asked for the ability to have a concrete slab onto which we would place a fenced concrete slab onto which we place the cooler freezer and then some additional storage. What we like to do at the concrete slab has been installed. The ramp up to that has been installed from Water Street. What we like to do now is all this is being done with the anticipation at some time in the future that that area would be enclosed. Well, the future is now. And what we'd like to do is to ask for the enclosure of the slab that is there. That will negate the need for a storage locker outside, et cetera, and actually clean things up. The cooler freezer is actually being manufactured as we speak, and the delivery I think is first week expected early in April. So those are things that we touched on before. What we like to do now, the big addition that we'd like to do now, there's an existing canopied area on the river side of Water Street. Very, very, very popular. But also right now pinched for space. One that doesn't, even include if there's a staff door where your cursor is, it doesn't cover the patron's door to the south. what we'd like to do is to extend the length of that canopied area.
Just makes sense.
And then also, where now it's mixture of brick and concrete and whatever else, make it make it a uniform surface, concrete. Also, we wouldn't be simply extending the canopy. We'd actually be rebuilding it. We'd be taking what is down, currently there down, and actually be building something more permanent, if you will. Basically, the big thing is we want to be able to enclose this with some canvas and vinyl enclosure in the winter and then heat it. Right now, that's virtually impossible. One, because of the limited height that is available because of how the existing canopy was constructed, and the second is it's completely uninsulated. It's just simply a metal roof. What we'd like to do is to have something a little bit more solid with some more, basically bringing it up to, full insulation or R20 roof insulation. So that would be the second thing. And that would extend not nearly to the end of the building, but a few feet from the end of the building on the south. And then it will extend to the north, past the existing building and, again, about 6 feet south of the new addition. So we would have something, and also this would also include a little bit of an overhang, so that when patrons are putting their beer down on the counter, they wouldn't get wet or filled with water when it rains. So basically, that is that's really what we're looking to do. So much of when we look at the river back, it'd be pretty much unchanged. We also recognize many of the patrons love to bring their puppies. Not every patron loves that, so we're going to have a dedicated fenced dog area in the southwest corner of the property on an existing bricked area. So, and also, again, the timing is important. What we'd like to do is the deck season really begins in probably about 6 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks. We're not going to be able to accomplish all this in that time frame. What we'd like to do is to do the work to the south of the building, the new fencing and paving between over these next 2 months. And then when things wind down this fall is to redo the canopied area and make the enclosure around on the deck area. So that's basically what we're looking at as sort of a phased approach to this, but we want to present the whole comprehensive plan to you this evening.
As staff, I just wanted to highlight one thing that we discovered, Mr. McFadden. The dumpster that's shown here doesn't appear like it's in the enclosure, and that would have to be in an enclosed area. So we might have to have you modify the fence line here to accommodate the dumpster.
Perfectly understand.
All right. Any questions or comments from the commissioners on this one? Commissioner Bradford?
I just have a question on the timeline. I didn't quite understand when you were talking about doing the enclosure that will eventually be the kitchen build out. Is that something you're going to do right away?
For October again, it would. Okay. It depends on the weather, but basically we're looking at it'll be late September, October, something, and it would be this fall.
Okay.
Any other questions?
It would be somewhat weather dependent.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor, I did have one question about that enclosure on the north side, putting the cooler freezer within there. Is that, so I'm assuming that that's going to be adjoined onto the structure, or is that cooler freezer going to be more or less independent of the building itself?
No, it would actually be inside the building. So again,
okay.
It's an indoor-outdoor cooler freezer. It will be outdoors until September, October or sometime, and then it will be fully enclosed after that, from then on into perpetuity.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Any other questions? All right, hearing none. So what are we looking for tonight, Rodney?
Well, it's approval of the site plan and building plans. The one item that we highlighted is needing to be modified to accommodate the dumpsters, so we'd include that in the motion as well.
All right,
Excuse me.
go ahead.
How far are they, I couldn't tell on the drawing, how far are they, where the proposed kitchen area is on that line? How close are they to the property line?
So this is in a downtown business district, central business district. They can be up to the property line, essentially.
Property line.
Yeah.
So they'll have room to enclose that to keep the freezer away, I mean, until we get, are they putting a fence in there to block off from the public until they get the structure built?
Well, I think it's a secured cooler until such time the walls are up. The foundation, as he mentioned, is in place now. They do show a fencing that's planned to be installed out on the street side of that as well.
Block it off
Yeah.
until they get it okay.
All right, so is there a resolution for the site plan?
There probably is here, yeah.
We'll load for you.
I closed all those maps, so I think it's good.
All right. You'll have to,
Should
there it
catch
is,
up.
it catches up. All right, so at this point, I would entertain a motion for approval of the resolution that's in the packet.
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Robinson, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Bradford. Any discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
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 And any opposed? None opposed. That motion carries. Item number 11 is to request to amend the zoning ordinance code 78-208, parent 8, parent J, related to home occupation sales. And Michael, you want to give us the history of this one, or what do you guys want to do? Or Rodney?
I can just give a quick indication. Gentleman who's here with us tonight is interested in expanding the opportunity to do in-home sales of some products. He'll go through that. This isn't an actionable item tonight. It's an introduction to an item. As you recognize, the city has home occupation standards within the ordinance already. I think we're trying to gauge whether there's appetite to try to go through a process to evaluate whether we should expand from our current ordinance regulations or not. But I think the applicant would like to speak to us about that.
Sure, come on up. It's Eric. All right, thanks for being here, and you can adjust the microphone any way you wish there.
Thank you very much for seeing me and giving me time to speak. I didn't realize that there was going to be such a large impact of this. I made a post on Facebook, and I apologize if you've received any phone calls or anything like that about this. But yes, essentially the way that this reads is it says that nothing but produce can be, homegrown produce can be sold at your home. So there's many of us that sell things like MLM, Mary Kay, Tupperware, eggs, things like that. And I do believe that there's a cottage clause, but I'm not quite sure. I haven't really looked into that as well. That may allow other people to sell things like that out of their homes. But just for people who were impacted with their positions during COVID, and even still, a lot of people sell other aspects or other goods out of their homes other than just produce. So I just ask that we review this and maybe amend the language to allow other things to be sold.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much.
And then, at this point, I would just say we really haven't even really had a formal internal discussion or had any conversation with the city attorney or anything like that. I think what we really wanted to do is bring this here and, see if that's something you want us to do.
I should just highlight this was touched a number of years ago, and maybe it's more than 10 already, but it's a pretty big lift to try to evaluate the scenarios that might be impacted. And so if we want to do this, it's going to take time and energy from the commissioners and council members and city staff. I'm not saying it's not a worthy cause. I'm just suggesting that it's not as simple as cherry picking from different communities, these little aspects, because each community, these become very personalized for the community interests. And back when we were contemplating it in the past, there was a lot of discussion about in-house services such as attorney and CPAs and other things that kind of drove the direction in some respects. Now there might be opportunities for other makers and or products being sold and maybe distributed out of homes. We're here to tell you we're certain there's things that are going on out there unbeknownst to us. And unless it's a problem, we don't become aware of it. We're not trying to become aware of those unless they are problems. So it is something that would take energy for us to really walk through. So be aware of that.
Good.
Alderperson Carabello.
Because one of the things it seems like would be the problem of, if somebody is asking to actually have a store in their home compared to a, what's referred to as a MLM, I guess, multi-level marketing thing, where somebody has an event at their house on a rare occasion, and like what are the examples? Like a Mary Kay thing, or like a Tupperware type party event, which, so those are the biggest concerns, I'm guessing, is that somebody requesting basically to turn their house into a store, which we wouldn't want, and the neighbors wouldn't want, and that would be a whole, as you referred to, as a heavy lift, or a lot of gray matter involved.
Not unlike other ordinance changes, in some cases, it's challenging to get a well-rounded group of participants, and affected people don't become affected or don't generally get involved unless they're affected, and oftentimes that's after the fact. So it's trying to balance that and recognizing that we have different levels of residential uses, of course, single-family detached, duplexes, multifamily. All of those would have to factor into the deliberation, and do you stratify those to some degree additionally based on particular uses. So you can just see that the onion could get fairly deep.
Commissioner Farrell?
Yeah, I'm in favor of, at a minimum, modifying the amendment, if not completely scratching it and starting over. If you Google it, you'll see real quick there's some models out there. One's the Home-Based Business Fairness Act, and there's some really great articles too written by some planners that really make a strong argument that the home-based business is a great thing for a community. A lot of those businesses eventually turn into brick and mortar operations, which is obviously something that we like to see. But yeah, I think that I can understand where this could snowball into a huge workload. I don't know how much I could help, but I'd be willing to help. But I do think that it's worth at least amending, if not taking a real look at it, because I think these people operating in the shadows, and that's just turning a blind eye to them, is not ideal. Because I mean, you're making them into low-level criminals, really. They're violating the law, and I don't think that's a good situation. I think we need to bring them into the sunshine and regulate them best we can on a case-by-case basis. Somebody wants to put a foundry next to my house, I'm not good with that. If they want to run Mary Kay out of there, then have at it. If it becomes a traffic problem, I want to be able to call Michael, and he can go out there and tell him, hey, you got too many cars out and blocking the guy's mailbox. But I don't know. I'm in general a supporter of home-based business, and I don't have one, but I think it's a good thing for a community.
Okay. Joanne, did you have anything?
I just want to say that I mean, obviously, some of these don't impact neighbors or neighborhoods at all, according to what it is you're doing. But then there there can be situations where it is an impact on neighborhood, property values, all those kinds of things. So I do think we need to be careful with whatever we, decide to do. And I know there are, I don't think any here in Stoughton, I'm not sure about McFarland, but in some of the other new communities that are going in other places, the covenants along with like no clotheslines in the yard are also no home-based businesses, no vehicles with decal for home-based business in the driveways. I mean, so there, and COVID has obviously had a lot of people turning to those businesses though too. So a lot of things have changed because of COVID. But I agree with Rodney. It's a hard lift because there's a lot of people that are impacted by it, not just the purveyor of the business. I mean, it is neighbors, it is communities and whatnot. So I'm willing to take a look at it because I do think there are a lot of people supporting themselves that way. So that's important. I do think a lot of them go to brick and mortar. We have examples of that right in our own community, that businesses that have started in somebody's garage years ago and then have tried to go to Main Street. Some have failed, some have succeeded. And so I'm willing to look at it. I mean, I think we should for the citizens that have those businesses and just see how we do keep them from being criminals. I know there was a question when I moved into my house. I'm a realtor. I do most of my business out of the house, but I don't have any customer traffic. Mine is all just one-on-one, my computer work and phone calls and that kind of thing. So, but no, one of my neighbors was an attorney and was going to have some client traffic in her house and had the same situation a number of years ago. So I do think it's worth taking a look at.
Okay. How about those on Zoom? Who wants to go first? Alderperson Schumacher, you have any thoughts on this one?
Well, just waiting for my dog to stop barking before I unmuted.
At your home-based business, dog groom.
I think this is certainly worth having a look at and maybe even to help do some of the lifting on it, have a task force, a temporary task force that would be assigned to that so that we could get a little bit more out into the roots of the community with it. I mean, I think someone like Doran would be good in there as a realtor. Maybe some of the other ones that have started their businesses small like that and ended up, I think would be valuable input on that. It does get a little bit of a slippery slope, especially when you start talking about that traffic volume in there. If you've got, cars showing up all the time, where that could be kind of a nuisance to neighbors for sure. But I do think it's something that is worth looking at for sure.
All right. Alderperson Majewski?
I'm just pretty much in the same sentiment as Alder Schumacher.
Okay, so you want to volunteer Commissioner Bradford as well?
Thanks, Tom.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Brett.
All right. How about Commissioner Robinson?
Well, I kind of like the way it's being handled right now. If there's no complaints, we're kind of giving it a blind eye. And once we change this into any kind of a legal operation by allowing that, complaints probably aren't going to matter anymore. And yeah, that's what I have to say about it. I like the way it's being handled.
Okay, thank you. I mean, the way I look at it is I certainly am open to looking at it, but I can see where it can be really complicated, especially if you're trying to make it equitable. And, there might be some misperceptions of what types of businesses are going on in different places, and we certainly don't want people to feel like they're being targeted for enforcement. So I think that's just another angle I'd be concerned about, as well as some of the traffic issues. But we could certainly ask around and do some research and, you know, maybe bring back some information and see what you think. Like Rodney said, we're not here to take action tonight. We just really wanted to kind of get a feel for where everybody's at, but it sounds like we want to take somewhat of a slow approach to it, but really non-committal at this point as far as where we're going to land. I think that's what I'm hearing. All right, anybody else have any final thoughts on this one? Thank you for being here, Eric, and bringing it to our attention. And then I guess we'll see what we can bring back. So I would say that would possibly be a future agenda item. Anything else?
The Stoughton Trailers development area, that will continue to migrate through the process. We actually would anticipate a urban service area amendment for them. You also know we've got a public hearing for the urban service, for the comprehensive plan amendment. That's scheduled for the April 10th meeting. But the urban service area would follow soon thereafter. We still anticipate seeing the final plat for the Magnolia Springs development on the south side of the city. So there's certainly things that are anticipated to come forward yet. We don't yet know if Kettle Park West is going to come back with another iteration to the Lot 27, Lot 15 behind the Hilton True area. We don't know if that's going to materialize or continue, but we provided input on that process already, so we'll see where that goes.
And just as a reminder then, so next month we have our regular meeting, and then the following night we have a joint meeting with the city council in regards to the quick trip.
Correct.
So, you know, we'll be sending out some information on that, I believe.
Yeah, just to highlight, commissioners and council members, I sent out a correspondence related to the quick trip public hearing. If you got any public records documents or materials that you want to include in the record, forward those to Michael. We're compiling them and they'd be put into the materials presented to the joint committee.
So the way that works basically is the city council's acting not legislatively, but as a quasi-judicial. So all the materials that you've received could be considered evidence for that decision-making process. So that's why we're encouraging you to share that with Michael to make sure everybody's looking at the same thing. Okay, Alderperson Caravello.
If we're on the future agenda items, I have something that I am curious about as maybe potentially a future agenda item, I think. And I've done no homework on this, unfortunately. But I'm just curious, it's popped into my mind lately, and I'll bet Rodney will have a quick answer to this, knowing all things having to do with planning and zoning, is does something exist as far as citing something like a gas station adjacent to a school, daycare, something like that, as far as distances? I don't know what we have on our books, if we have anything on our books as far as something like that goes.
I don't believe we do. Unlike sexually oriented land uses, there is specific language in our code that prohibits them in certain distances from facilities such as that. I'm not familiar with anything related to gas station siting.
Wellhead.
There's a wellhead protection area. Wellhead protection is protecting groundwater that serves our municipal wells. So there's overlay districts that we prevent them from siting them in certain locations.
Okay, so keeping that potential of contamination,
right,
something like that, but we don't have anything at this point.
Right.
Okay. That might be, I'm just wondering, like I said, I've done no homework, but I'm curious if other communities have something like that, or if that would be something that would be prudent to look into.
All right, any other future agenda items? Go ahead.
Just looking forward to the April 11 meeting on the quick trip. Not that I'm looking forward to it, but I'm thinking ahead. I saw what the city attorney said, and I'm wondering, is there any way to get sort of a synopsis of that out to the public so that maybe we don't need 100 more chairs in here that night?
We certainly have it on video.
I know it's on
and the
video, I saw
PowerPoint.
that.
And that link is available.
I did, and I watched it. I'm thinking more because people tend to be lazy and short attention span. You know, they say if you're going to make a YouTube video, 3 minutes max. So, you know, I'm just
if you
asking.
can get an attorney to get it down to 3 minutes.
Yeah, well, you wouldn't, the attorney wouldn't do that. You would need somebody that could understand it and condense it to a normal person speak.
Are you volunteering?
He presented a PowerPoint.
I'm just, yeah.
The PowerPoint is available.
Oh, okay.
That was
well,
part of his presentation.
Okay, yeah, I know.
That can be put out there if you think.
Perhaps I'm not articulating enough. I'm thinking like a really short, like, bottom line up front, we used to call it in the Navy. At the top of the document, there was one paragraph that if you were the commanding officer, you could read that bottom line up front. And if you didn't want to see all the details, you were done. You read one paragraph and you don't need to read the rest of the document. If you're interested, you can continue on. Something like that so that maybe people could say, oh, you know, I was going to go to that meeting and now I've read this. I'm just not going. Yeah, I don't know.
I can talk to the IT guys and see if they can dream something up.
Just a thought.
The takeaways, I think, are the fact that we're focusing on the conditional use permit.
Right.
And the uses associated with that were the in-vehicle service and sales.
Right.
That's the CUP aspect of it.
Right.
That was one of the primary things that was a takeaway, I believe.
Yeah, and then beyond that, I think it's really the testimony, if you will, the evidence, and whether or not, you know, the city council will decide that one side or another has testimony that shows, you know, that under the conditional use permit it should be allowed or not allowed. I mean, that's kind of it in a nutshell.
Right.
So I can see if maybe the IT guys can put something together that
Yeah, I
somebody
just don't
could
know if
watch,
the-
or
I
somebody
don't know if
could
the
go
people out
on,
there
and if they
Facebook
wanted
may know
to,
that, I guess.
if they wanted to dig, then they could start clicking on links or
Yeah.
something. You know, and if they're not interested in clicking on a link, then at least they'll be like, okay.
Sure.
I mean, there could be a link just on the conditional use permit law, and there could be one for our ordinance, and there could be one on, you know, what they're doing there, and see where it goes. So I'll work with them and see if they can put something together.
Okay.
And by, when you said the attorney's presentation, what, part of that, what you were referring to is the Act 67-ness component of the, I mean, basically, I think that was Matt's presentation, was like,
Yeah.
yeah, and I don't know if there is a one sentence, Act 67, here's what it is, what it does, and why. I don't,
Well, my takeaway was that the state has basically taken a lot of autonomy away from the local jurisdiction. And if you don't have any really hard defendable evidence, then we don't really have any discretion. And I don't know that the general public understands that. And so if they did, it might cut down the amount of chatter that night, I guess, is what I'm trying to get to. And maybe not. Maybe people still show up and say, you guys need to do something, and we would say,
We can't.
we unless you've got some evidence, then we really can't. So, I don't know, just a thought.
yeah.
Okay.
I think Attorney Dragney's presentation was pretty good, and the folks that were here, and if they do pay attention, they do actually watch it,
Right.
they'll absorb that, and some light bulbs will go on, hopefully, I think.
Okay.
All right. Thank you. Anything else? I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll move to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Schumacher. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? None opposed. We're adjourned. Thank you, and have a great night.
You got a new workforce.